Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have titled this video The Worst Olympics Ever, which is a very bold claim to make. However, I think the 1904 Olympics in St. Louis more than back up that claim. This Olympiad has received some online attention already, including some YouTube videos mainly focused on the marathon that happened in this Olympiad. Check out John Boys for a more in-depth review of the marathon if you're interested. I will get onto that, but I think there's a whole lot more about this Olympiad beyond just that marathon that really makes it just a terrible Olympics. So, setting the stage for it, this was the first Olympics to be held in the US. The first two were held in Athens and Paris, respectively. They were both very Euro dominant. Nations such as Iran and Haiti did take part, but it was pretty much only Europeans that medaled. However, the only non European nation that medaled was the US, who won the medal standings both times. With this in mind, they were ready to host their first ever Olympics in Chicago in 1904. And yeah, you heard that right. It is Chicago that was originally scheduled to host this Olympics. However, the Louisiana Purchase Expedition, who were in charge of organizing the World's Fair in St. Louis in 1904, got really upset about this. There were two massive events then being planned to be in the Midwest, the Olympics in Chicago and the World's Fair in St. Louis. And the Louisiana Purchase Expedition threatened to hold their own Olympics if it wasn't awarded to St. Louis. And this hissy fit managed to win them the Olympics. And Chicago, despite attempts in 2016, have never gotten to host any Olympic Games. So, trying so hard to get those Olympics, the Louisiana Purchase Expedition then treated it as an absolute afterthought. They were hired primarily to organize the World's Fair, so they only really saw the Olympics as a threat to them. And once it wasn't a threat in the same city as them, they didn't really bother to keep it round. They had someone organize it, but it was a very loose organization, not much thought or effort put into it, as you'll see later on again with the marathon, amongst other things. So this is probably the only Olympics that were completely treated as an afterthought. It should be brought up that the Olympics weren't quite the massive event that they are today at this point in time. This particular Olympics took place over about 5 months, which is fairly common for the time. It wasn't for a while that the Olympics would be downsized into a few weeks as a format. And at this point in time, it was really the athletic events that drew in the big crowds. Everything else was kind of just also there. So perhaps it's a bit understandable that they didn't treat the Olympics with that much thought or effort. However, considering how hard they worked to get the Olympics to St. Louis, it's still a bit disappointing that upon getting the Olympics, the expedition then decided to do pretty much nothing with them. And disappointing for Chicago as well, who perhaps could have thrown an amazing Olympics. We'll never know. Uh, so, if you came to the events for the World's Fair, there were some pretty cool things you could see. The world's first wireless telephones and x-ray machines were there, or some of them, maybe not the world's first, but some of the first ones. So that's pretty cool. There were even airship competitions. Honestly, it seemed like a pretty fun time to go see the World's Fair in St. Louis. But there were also trafficked Filipinos in a massive human zoo, which, is a massive violation of human rights and really iffy, to put it lightly. There's really no defense for this. They took the Filipinos to America and had them displayed. They had them separated into how civilized they deemed them to be in different groups, and they were put on display for Americans to see. The Philippine American scholar Gianna Langhals even says that they could throw anything from garbage to urine at these Filipinos. So, not a great time for them. It did at least give them the chance to show off some of their sports from their own culture and history. still on display for Americans' enjoyment. So, not a great thing, but at least they did get to show off some of their own stuff. The uh, head of the IOC, Pierre Coubertin, didn't actually even bother to come to the games, showing just how much care was shown to the event. But he did send two delegates, one from Germany, one from Hungary. Ferenc Kameni, or probably Ferenc Kameni, I should say, from Hungary, saw the events taking place from the Filipinos. They were unofficial events, but still part of the showcase. And he was enraged, but not by the fact that people were being put on display for Americans to see. He was mainly just upset that non-white people were getting to participate in sport. So he sent a very angry letter back to Coubertin about this, which was incredibly racist, which I guess was probably fairly common for the time, but still not good. Um, as for the actual events, they at least had some redeeming qualities. The sporting events didn't have humans on display, but they were very American centric. The previous two games mainly just had European nations competing, so I guess to make up for that, we had pretty much only American athletes. In fact, in ascending order of the top three nations with the most athletes competing, number 3 would be Germany with 22, number 2 would be Canada with 56, and number 1 would be the US with 526. And the US, unsurprisingly, considering this massive advantage in competitors they had, dominated the medal standings like never seen before. They won 76 gold medals, 78 silver, and 77 bronze, for a total of 231 medals. The next best country in the standings was Germany, who won 4 gold medals and 15 overall. Again, domination that would never be seen before or after, mainly because the US made up for about 90% of the competitors actually at these games. One interesting thing about this Olympiad, though, is that it was the first time third place competitors were recognized. Initially, in the first two Olympics, the winner was given a silver medal and the runner up bronze. However, a gold medal was created for this one, given to the winner, and then silver went to second place and bronze to third, which has been the precedent since. There were also a few events that I just found a little interesting. I can't talk about everyone, or this video would be massive, but some interesting events include the plunge for distance. This was the only time it was in the Olympic program. The event was a diving event, but rather than judging a competitor on what they do in the air before they hit the water, it was an event in which you would dive into the water and, without moving your arms and legs, try and move as far forward as possible within 60 seconds. And the person that could dive the furthest in 60 seconds without moving their arms or legs would be given the medal. Quite a weird event, but kind of interesting. The sport of roque, which is an American version of croquet, also appeared in its one and only Olympic program. The Americans, given their massive competitive advantage, also had a bunch of events in which there were team sports, but only the Americans participated. For instance, in water polo, every single team was American, so the Americans by default took gold, silver, and bronze. That was the case with a lot of the events, including tug of war. That was in the Olympics. That's pretty fun. Again, won all 3 medals for America by default. The only thing where that wasn't the case was fencing, where, interestingly, Cuba managed to get 3 out of the 5 medals, and a 4th medal was won by a Cuban fencer. However, he was part of a mixed team, so the medal wasn't won exclusively for Cuba. Still, considering how much America dominated every other event, it's still pretty intriguing that Cuba managed to dominate fencing. Now, I talked about the marathon beforehand, and I think it's time to get into that now. This might actually be the single dumbest event to ever happen at any Olympics ever, this one specific marathon. There's so much weird stuff that happened, mainly because of really poor organization, uh, with, again, the expedition who set this up not putting too much effort into the Olympics. It showed with the organization. For one thing, there were 3 stops for water in the entire race, which is not great for athletes' health. On top of this, a lot of the race was run over dirt roads, which wouldn't be a massive issue, except that cars were also allowed to run freely on the roads whilst the race was happening, which meant that they would leave a storm of dust behind them, causing a massive issue for the competitors. To add to this, it was 92 degrees Fahrenheit on the day the marathon happened, about 33 degrees Celsius, and let me reiterate, there were only 3 stops for water in the entire course. So a bunch of competitors dropped out, very few actually finished, and I'm going to list them off, and they just get dumber and dumber as I go. So, Sam Meller, he got off to an early lead, but he experienced severe cramping and eventually had to quit. John Lorden gave up after vomiting during the race. William Garcia collapsed early in the race and was taken to the hospital as he was hemorrhaging from all the dust he had inhaled from the dirt roads with cars running on them. Ken Lau couldn't finish the race because he was chased off the course by a pack of wild dogs. Yes, that really did happen in an Olympic event. Felix Carvajal strangely seemed to not actually care about the marathon that much because he saw an orchard of apples and decided, nah, I don't actually need to finish this race. Went over to the apples and started eating them. Turns out that said apples were rotten, however, so he got food poisoning and then had to pull out of the race. Frederick Loers was also experiencing severe cramping, so he just got into a car for 11 miles and then got out and pretended to finish the race. However, spectators saw this happen, so he was later disqualified. Interestingly, he would go on to legitimately win the Boston Marathon the very next year. However, the one person who won was, just a minute, I put it in my notes, sorry, Thomas Hicks. Sorry about that. He, around mile 10, was struggling quite a lot with his health for the aforementioned reasons. Very little care given to athlete safety. And his trainers, in response to him struggling around mile 10, gave him raw eggs and strychnine. Now, you might recognize strychnine as a pesticide used in rat poison. However, at the time, this was used as a stimulant. And he did then finish the race. Fun fact, this is the first recorded use of drugs in the modern day Olympics. Hicks finished the race, where he was hallucinating by the end of it, probably from the 3 stops of water and literal poison he was given to help him finish the race. He eventually left, having given everything to finish the race, with 4 doctors severely unwell. And I think all of that together, the humans on show, the fact that the head of the IOC didn't even bother coming to the games, the fact that they were treated as an afterthought, is with very poor organization, especially in this just obscenely stupid marathon, shows just how bad the 1904 Olympics were. In fact, they were so bad that a fake Olympiad was scheduled 2 years later in Athens, which wasn't officially stated to be because of how bad 1904 was, but it very likely influenced the 1906 games, which are unofficial. It's the only time we've ever seen a Olympiad in between, an unofficial one in between 2 real Olympiads. However, at least what this did not do was cripple the economy of a nation who spends way too much money on an event that they don't actually have the capability of hosting, leaving a bunch of stadiums with white elephants. It didn't do that. It just sucked in just about every other way. which is why I think the 1904 St. Louis Olympics deserve the title of worst Olympics ever. Thanks for watching.